Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. It's election time, which is so exciting for junkies like us, and nobody else really cares. But to talk about everything going on from the AP, let's start over here. Kristen Wyatt, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And from the Statesman, that great little junkie paper. When I mean junkie, not junkie bad, but for political junkies.
Yeah, just don't
Peter
suggest I'm a junkie.
You're a reporter. You're an alcoholic. It's a different thing. Actually, how would you explain the Statesman to somebody who's never heard of it?
It's the wonky political paper for very inside baseball coverage.
I compare it to the high school newspaper that if you're on the football team, you want to see if your picture's in it. And every state legislator has to open up the Statesman to see what's being said.
I also like to think we inform people on things, but that works as well.
You go ahead and keep on thinking that. That's pretty. I tell you what, before we get into election, let's talk a little bit about Evie Hudak and the great success folks had with the recalls of 2 legislators. Now there's another one coming up. I talked to those folks. They seem to think that they're on target if they keep this going. Is it going to make it to the ballot, do you think? Or get enough signatures?
I haven't heard about it, but I don't see why not. Now that they have shown that they can do it twice, I would imagine they would attract more attention, more money, more backers to help with the effort. Anything can be done, as we know, if you have enough money to get folks on the ground.
At this point, they don't have any money. I mean, it's very similar to what happened down in Pueblo, where Victor Head borrowed $4 grand from his grandmother to start this off. So this idea that that money's being parachuted in, I think it's mostly volunteer. What do you think?
Yeah, they got more of an uphill climb, too. They got to get around 19,000 signatures by December 5th. It's a lot more than they did in the other districts. But, I mean, don't underestimate. They are motivated right now, especially after what happened down in the Springs and Pueblo. Plus, they're getting help from those groups. Rocky Mountain Gun Owners this time is on board.
Playing ball.
Right away. So, I mean, it's doable.
Well, let's play with this, because this is going to be, if Evie Hudak is recalled, a recall election would probably happen sometime in the middle of the legislative session, which is, of course, between January and the beginning of May. So she would be running as the session is going, meaning she would be looking over her shoulder for every vote, every motion she does. That'd be fun.
Well, I mean, what you're talking about is the dynamic for her and the tone, probably. And I actually spoke with her on recall night at Morse's office, or at his watch party headquarters, and she even then, before this was even looming over her head, realistically, was saying that tone changes and lawmakers are probably going to be looking over their shoulder. So,
good. So, I love that. But play this. If she's taken out, the Senate turns Republican.
That's why I think it's so interesting, not just for her, how every vote for her matters, every day for her will matter. The whole play of the entire legislature will matter. And they've never had anyone up while they're in session. It'll be really amazing to watch there are Democrats who, of course, are shaking in their boots, scared what will happen. What can we get done before this might happen in case we have a Republican Senate? There's other Democrats. You saw a column just this week in the Denver Post of a lefty writing about maybe it would be good for the governor and maybe it would be good for Democrats to have a foil and to have someone else to lay blame on things,
Well, think of Hickenlooper's first 2 years. Here he is, the most popular governor in the country, because he hasn't had to sign anything. He hasn't had to take a position on anything controversial. One session with Democrats in control of the legislature. And then you got civil unions, you've got the gun issue, you've got rural electric price hike, you've got
elections bill.
The terrible elections bill, which is my favorite, which is blowing up all over. And I think Hick might actually be giving money to the recall effort right now.
I don't know about that, but I mean, Kristen makes a great point. I mean, yes, I mean, for a governor who wanted at least to walk down the middle of the road,
he never wanted to. He convinced people you can't sign into law what he signed. He didn't veto a single bill.
However you want to view it, that was the road he was walking down, and he was forced to make decisions that he probably wouldn't have wanted to.
They were also forced not to make decisions. The clemency.
Dunlap.
Or the Dunlap non-decision. Either he couldn't or he wouldn't make a decision. All right, let me put out a prediction. Tell me if you think I'm right. If this grassroots effort gets enough votes to put it on the ballot, I'm pretty certain, not her, but I think Evie Hudak would resign so that the Democrats could replace her with another Democrat.
That's an interesting prospect. Everybody said the same about Morse.
Yeah.
I really think you have to leave it up to the lawmaker what she thinks. Although you could say she's very vulnerable, she has won tough races in the past. She could say, look, I have had serious opposition before. I have not been in this cakewalk district where I haven't had to take tough stances and persuade the middle. I don't know. I don't know whether she resigns.
I don't know. And I mean, from a party standpoint, at least when we were interviewing the Democratic Party for Morse and her own, they were pretty adamant that doing so would be an admission of guilt to a certain extent. You know, that if she resigns, then it's giving it up anyway. So,
well, it's not giving up. She'll be replaced by,
I understand.
by a Democrat. The Democrats stay in control.
Strategically, yes, it probably makes a lot of sense. But the message that they're sending by doing so might not be one that they want to
But the
send.
message, if she gets pulled out,
I hear you.
is even greater. I think the collective pressure on her, she would bow out. The governor would find some
Evie
good.
Hudak? Have you met Evie Hudak?
Oh, I've met Evie Hudak. You don't see it?
I mean, this is a strong-headed woman.
Well, think about John Morse. All right, you talk about a smug, pompous guy. It's John Morse, and he was certain he was going to win, and off he went. And now, I don't know what the man's doing. Evie's got to look at that and go, you know, I don't want my career to be the same way. If there's a job waiting for me in the Hickenlooper administration, maybe I'll make the switch. Thought?
I don't know that her job prospects would increase if she resigned, but not if she lost. I think there would be a lot of sympathy for her if she were recalled.
Yeah, there's a lot of sympathy for
the people
Hudak.
that would hire her after resigning would not hire her because she didn't resign. So I don't know.
Also, I mean, she won the first time by what? 400 something votes.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, and that was the same situation for Morris, and he didn't. Look, the other thing is that regardless of what happens, Democrats get to now go up in front of the cameras yet again and push their gun control message, which is that we're not going to back down. We're not afraid, you know, that these threats are being made to recall us. We're here to protect the people. We're here to make the community safer.
And I hope they keep doing that, because it will continue to blow up in their face. And sympathetic, you know, of course, there's nobody more sympathetic than Evie Hudak when she berates a rape survivor. That is how sympathetic she is.
It's an interesting point, and probably one that if this recall comes to a head, I can see the commercials now. I mean,
it's gonna be beautiful. All right, let's switch to the ballot now, because you get at least one or more ballots this year, and you can vote as many times as you like. Just go for poll. We'll talk later. The big one, of course, I think, is the statewide tax increase, and I'm curious, where's the governor? I mean, he's been doing a lot of great fundraising. They've got tons of money, and for all. To declare, I've been working against it. I'm part of the committee against it, and Independence Institute has been trying to educate people on it, so that's where I stand. But usually when Jon Hickenlooper wants a tax increase, he jumps out of airplanes, he rides the trolley cars, he runs around with people in A through I comic outfits. I haven't seen any of that. Where's the governor been on this?
You hear a lot of quiet frustration among other Democrats about how he's approached complicated things. They feel like, we have a popular governor, had a popular governor, built up a lot of capital, and what has he spent it on? Now is the time to jump out of airplanes and hop on trolleys and be your likable self to sell this to the middle. Whenever they're asked, they get very defensive. Of course, he is so supportive. You don't even understand how supportive he is. But where is he on TV? You don't see him a lot.
For those who might be new here,
answer,
for those who are new in Colorado, I've never seen a man who could sell a tax or debt increase better than Jon Hickenlooper. He comes across as a moderate business guy. He happens to be a Democrat, and these are good investments that we're making. So when he jumped out of an airplane for Referendum C, when he rode the trolley cars to raise money for RTD for their boondoggle, when the A through I property tax increase, pro-comp, the jail. I mean, the guy led the charge out front. He's the governor. He signed this 27% income tax increase onto the ballot. So
I don't think it's fair to say that he hasn't been out there at all. I mean, yes.
he was at a conference. He was at the one liftoff. I saw him
and
there.
if you ask him, he says he supports it and all of that. I mean, but you're right. I've been called to press conferences where Mayor Hancock has been, up front and center in support of this, but we haven't seen the governor. Look, I mean, I get what you're getting at. I mean, he's facing...
What does that tell you? What does it tell you that every other tax increase, he has been the guy on the camera?
He also hasn't been silent about saying that Colorado voters really don't have an appetite right now for a tax increase. I mean, he's been saying that for years. He didn't support school tax increases in the past.
And tax increase Proposition 103 2 years ago. I wouldn't. Don't make it sound like this guy's a friend to the taxpayer.
But I mean, he's made it clear that he has reservations when it comes to raising taxes on this issue, and so I'm personally not all that surprised.
Or
that
is it that he's got his finger in the wind and this doesn't look that great? As you said, people don't have an appetite for it.
I mean, yeah.
It might not be that he thinks it's not great, but he certainly is thinking about his own reelection. Do I want to be the governor that I can see already the ads? I tried to take your way of guns. I wanted to raise your taxes $1 billion, and I won't sign off on executing a man that we
That's a mass killer.
Yes, that's a mass killer.
But all those things are true.
But there's one thing
he raised $7 million for this tax increase
certainly.
from the usual suspects. And every other tax increase he's had, he's taken the lead, and he's won. I can't think of one that he hasn't won.
But there's something to be said for not giving your opponents easy fodder and making a spectacle of yourself.
I'm not that surprised.
All right, so wait a second. Let me see if I got it. You think that Jon Hickenlooper is more concerned about his re-election campaign and being seen as a tax-friendly guy than publicly leading the tax increase that he is publicly leading?
I don't know. That's what voters will have to decide. I think that's the criticism from both sides, and the left would love to see him lead this to passage, and the right, of course, would also love to see him lead it to failure.
But it's his.
He's dancing the dance. There's a balance. I mean, John, it's politics. I mean, they're trying to strike a balance. So if you ask him, he says he supports it, and he has been public about that. But yes, there's a balance. They're not necessarily going to throw him up in front of the cameras and give him the ammunition that.
Ammunition. This is going to be a great thing when it wins. He's gonna bail out education. He's going to reform education. He'll be able to go on to victory in 2014 with this. Governor Owens took a beating from lots of people in his own party when he endorsed a tax increase, Ref C, which was a timeout for Tabor. Some argue it wasn't a tax increase. He did that, and he had bipartisan support. I mean, he and Jon Hickenlooper worked out together to make this happen. Where's the coalition? Where are the business groups?
There's bipartisan support for this. I mean,
name 3 Republicans who support it.
All right. Well, is there a problem there as well?
I asked you a question. You said there's bipartisan support. So give me 3 Republicans.
Well, I mean, within the business community and things like that, where people are Republican. If you're referring to the legislature in one of the most divisive sessions I've ever seen in that building, no, there weren't Republicans supporting it because almost all of these issues were lockdown votes within the caucus.
Every other educational issue, like Ref C, had bipartisan support not only in the legislature but outside. I don't see the Denver Chamber. I don't see the Commerce and Industry Association. I don't see the NFIB. I don't give me 3 Republicans.
This is why I love this measure as a political junkie. I think it's going to be a great snapshot of where Colorado is, where it was when Ref C passed, where it is today. Because, like you said, you see a little evaporation of that broad coalition, but you can't discount the power of every teachers group in the state. They have a bunch of the foot soldiers. They have like 11 or more district offices. They're having really, really intense grassroots door-to-door campaigning. So if they do this without Republicans, I think this is the question that will say maybe we don't need to keep talking about the great purple state, the great swing state of Colorado. If these groups can see this happen without the Owens and the Caseys and the Metro Chambers and all those groups, backing them and somebody jumping out of airplanes, then maybe this is a left state.
Then we're not leaning to be California.
Yeah.
We're California.
And especially with this education reform issue, because the money that is pouring in, if you look at, I mean, what are they? They're over $7 million. They're close to $8 million now, and it's unions, it's education reform groups.
What education reform groups?
This is an education reform issue. I mean,
this is not an education reform issue. I don't see the reform. When I see the ads saying, bring back gyms and music class. No, read the bill. The square dancing. Read the bill. There is nothing.
No, it's more complicated.
There is nothing.
It's more complicated than that.
Is there anything that mentions those in the bill? Is there any guarantee the money will go to those things?
Well, no, but
no.
They want the money would be. The whole issue has been this money isn't going to go to the classroom, right? That's what the opposition has been saying, right? Their argument is that with the money, with having an innovation fund, which is a school reform issue, which is why you're seeing money coming from school reform groups.
What school reform groups?
I would have to go back and look, but we're talking about
Foundation,
Walmart's school reform. Foundation.
No, the Walmart. No,
they're pumping money in. They got $500,000 from them.
Time out. Let's get facts straight. You're a journalist. I've been looking at their reports. A guy named Ben Walton has given his own personal money.
So you're not going to extrapolate anything from that?
Absolutely, because the Walton Foundation has given money to lots of true reforms like tax credits,
obviously
pay
they
for
believe
performance,
in this. Well, they
school
believe
of
in
choice.
This, apparently.
No, he believes in that.
Fair enough.
Let's be clear about that.
Well, this is a great case to say, what do you consider reform? What do you consider an improvement? Or what do you consider a handout to groups that you don't think need it? So that's the question.
What's the big reform in this? There you go. I think that does it.
The big reform in this is that it completely rewrites the school funding formula for the state of Colorado, which is horribly boring to the voters.
So let me see if I got.
Is an important
Let me see if I
issue.
understand this. The governor is going to go up to somebody whose house has just been completely decimated by floods and go, you know what? We'd like to raise your taxes between 8 and 27.4% for projects that we really don't know what they're going to be, but I can guarantee they won't be fixing the roads or your house. Will you say yes?
It depends how much you believe in all-day kindergarten, I guess, for all students, which is something that they say the money is going to go towards.
That's one of those things.
But that's another thing, too. There's no guarantee that they will
guarantee.
spend it on that.
There is no guarantee.
There is.
It's also a tricky thing. Everybody acknowledges there's this huge problem that the burden shifts every year more to the states.
It's great reform. It's great reform. We can't guarantee you what it is, but it's going to be great reform.
I don't know. We were talking outside. Yeah. I don't think that this passes, to be perfectly honest. I mean, for a lot of the things you're saying, despite the $8 million, who knows how much they'll end up with at the end.
How many kids could get scholarships?
Honestly, do you want to know what I find more fascinating? Is that they spent at least $1 million on petition gathering, and they had to do a line-by-line review. I think they ended up with like 3,700 more signatures than they needed. Personhood, which was an all-volunteer effort, I mean, church groups and things like that, they ended up with like 24,000 more signatures than they needed.
And didn't pay a dime.
To me, that is fascinating.
So it tells you what the real grassroots support for some of
I hear you.
All right, well, there are going to be some other issues. Here's a tax issue that will pass, and I think it's a ridiculous tax issue. Not ridiculous. I think it's too much. Pot is now legal. Recreational sales of pot will be legal starting the beginning of the year. The question is, should we tax it? And so beyond the regular sales tax we have now, which let's say that's around 8% depending on what municipality, this is going to put 15% tax and then a 10% excise tax, and then so 15% excise tax, 10%
special sales.
It doesn't matter. My wallet says 25%.
Yes.
And then localities will put up to another 10% depending. I think Denver's 3%, others are 5%.
3.5%.
Yeah. So basically we're getting to close to a 45% tax on recreational pot. It'll pass because they're a political minority.
Yes.
It'll pass.
Yeah, it'll pass. I mean, their internal polling had it at like 77% or something like that. But But what's really interesting is what's happened with this. Something that's not being talked about a lot is that there's now this rift within the marijuana community itself. The opposition are these sort of like, it's like the Tea Party grassroots of like the marijuana.
Right. Well, there's a huge rift in the marijuana folks because some are Bob Marley, some are Grateful Dead, and they just can't agree on what group that is.
But some are business people, and the businesses, they're all for this tax because it's further legitimizing their industry, whereas the quote Bob Marley, Grateful Dead people, as you said, are a little more. And what happened is the opposition, they started doing these joint giveaways in Civic Center Park.
That'll get you votes.
Which, exactly. And what ended up happening is now the city council, Denver City Council, examining a really tough ordinance that would make it illegal to smoke weed in your house and have that smell waft into a neighbor's property.
Or even if somebody sees you through the window.
Or if they see you. I mean, a cop or a person could be walking by, and it almost gives you carte blanche to start looking in people's windows to a certain extent. None of that.
I thought that cigarette was actually a joint.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we've come in with machine guns. Yeah.
Well, they're arguing we wouldn't even be looking at this ordinance now if the AA's opponents didn't start handing out joints in Civic Center Park is one of the arguments that they're making. But
what bothers me about this is it is such an overreach of taxation. What they want to do and what they need to do to regulate it could be done for so much less and still have money left over for treatment and addiction issues and all the rest. But if you're gonna have a 50% increase on legal pot, this is pot, all right? These are not kegs of beer. This is a baggie. It's going to drive it to the underground market. So on one side, you've got a government that's going to get addicted to pot revenue, and then you're going to have not as much coming through because I think it's wildly overpriced. But I think that's an issue that's not going to.
I love this measure as a junkie even more than I love the school measure because this is, I can just see
Let's make it clear, as a political junkie, not a weed junkie.
Yes, all the master's theses that are going to be written about these taxes, how consumption changes when it's legal. Right. Nobody knows what consumption is, what people are paying now. I think even if these taxes pass, and I'm pretty sure they will, but I'm not 1,000% certain.
I'm 1,000% certain. I will give you odds.
Still, your point about how high the taxes are, the overtaxation, will still be so much lower than Washington State, which doesn't ask voters. They've already decided it's 75%. And just this week, Washington State came out with an analysis that they are hoping 1/4 of the market goes to the legal side.
Wow.
So that's a pretty compelling. Nobody knows how much do taxes have to be.
That's amazing. Think of the economics lesson.
What lawmakers were talking about at these high taxes of saying, people will pay a lot of money to avoid the dark alley drug dealer and this sketch, and that I think is very true. People will pay a lot. And then what a pot producer pointed out was like people don't go to alleys and to scary strangers. They buy them from neighbors and friends and their college roommates.
You seem to know that a little too easily, Mr. Marcus.
And everybody's. I mean, right now you can anybody can grow. So
and so exactly.
And where the businesses, I think they're very interesting too, because there are also people in the legalization advocacy community who believe, right at the end of the day, like you said, most people don't smoke pot. So you need people that don't use the drug to support the drug. And a lot of people think that the key to getting there is to show, look at this windfall you're going to get from.
Really, it is a fascinating case study in economics when you overprice something, and it is going to be very overpriced.
Politics
how much, and then the political part, which is if you're pro pot and you want to institutionalize this and make it something that we get used to and the government loves the money from. Well, you want it to maximize the amount of money that goes to the government for it. But if you do it this much, you're not.
Well,
so this is dangerous.
Than that. I mean, a few years ago in the legislature, when marijuana topics came up, it was a big joke, and the puns continue. But now, with this tax question, it morphed from a joke to Republicans, fighting this as a tax issue, and Democrats pushing it as a tax issue. And we know Republicans thought it was too high. Democrats didn't think it was high enough at first.
Yeah, actually, great point on that. For those people who think, Republicans are a bunch of social squares.
Right.
A lot of them are, all right? A lot of them are tough social cons. But when you got right down to it, they were advocating for pot users not paying that much.
It was a tax question.
And I think they were on the right side of that issue. And I just can't imagine 5 years from now, when we find out that only a fourth of the transactions are legal because of it, that the legislature is going to go, why don't we lower that? I just can't imagine the guy who runs on re-election saying, I'm the guy that lowered taxes on pot.
Hey, it might be an attractive campaign, to be perfectly honest.
All right, there's some other weird elections going on. We've only got a couple minutes left. There are how many counties that will be voting on whether they wish to, in the future, vote on seceding from the state of Colorado? These are mostly eastern.
Yeah.
10 counties.
Is it?
It's 10 counties. And I think what's interesting is today, there are people with this campaign, the 51st state campaign, they call it, who are making a presentation not in the area. They're making a presentation in El Paso County, in Colorado Springs, because they know that even if, let's say, all those 10 counties say, yes, we want out, it doesn't matter what they think. That just means what it's kind of a straw poll. The state legislature has to agree. So they got to find some allies outside New Colorado or North Colorado or whatever they.
I like New Colorado. I like New Colorado. Not
hey,
North
at
Colorado.
the very least, yes, it's an incredibly uphill battle. Will secession happen? Probably not. But at the very least, who was paying attention to these rural parts of the state before? Not
Nobody.
too many. Not many
this
people
administration
down
and
here.
not this legislature.
I'm not even thinking politically, which of course is important, but voters. I mean, along the Front Range, nobody thought about it. All of a sudden, rural Colorado, the northern rural Colorado is on people's radars as being like, maybe these people are being ignored. And their issues are now in front of the people, in front of the legislators. So whatever happens with it, they got the attention that they were looking for.
Yeah.
So,
and this is a straw poll. This is how do you feel about it? Do you think they'll pass?
I mean, in some counties I think in some counties.
How many do they win out of 10?
I'd say 10. I mean, what
Really?
if I said to you, would you like to be in charge? Would you like to keep more of your money? And
Yeah,
would you like to be? Would
especially.
you like to be more important? Who would say no?
Especially out there.
Not me. I would say no. I'm already important enough.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Any big surprises in this election? Last 10 seconds.
I don't know. It's kind of an under the radar. Watch the Denver school board race. That's
Denver
gonna
school
be
board
very
race and the
interesting.
Ducko school board race.
I think turnout will be lower, even with everybody getting ballots, than we can ever imagine.
Wow, that's going to be an amazing one. Vote early, vote often. Have a great time. We'll see you next week.